So welcome to our module around Patagonia Camp. So Britt and I are going to share our experience. We took a trip together in the end of November. It was amazing. There's a lot to talk about around the subject around Torres Alpine and Patagonia within the Chile region. So we're basically just going to try to focus on a few things. I know there probably are a lot of questions about planning for this region, but I think that would take several more modules, so we decided to kind of present Patagonia Camp specifically. So Patagonia Camp, have any of you heard of it to start with, aside from Adam? So basically they offer an all-inclusive experience. So it really blends high-end accommodation because you stay in luxury yurts and also kind of all-inclusive services. So daily excursions from the lodge allow guests to explore various regions of Chile's Torres Alpine National Park. So where the lodge is located is not actually in the park itself, but it's about 9 miles from the main entrance. And then just some quick facts about the distances from each of the main cities and airports. There aren't any real big cities in the south of Chile, but really the closest town is Puerto Natales, which operates its own small airport, but that's still about a 2.5-hour drive from Patagonia Camp. And then Punta Arenas, where most of the flights will be coming into, is about a 3.5-hour drive from the camp. So just to kind of give you a sense of kind of proportions of where things are. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with the south of Chile. Basically, like there's Patagonia within Chile and also within Argentina. So as you can see, like up here that's where Patagonia Camp is, and it's right before the entrance of Torres Alpine. And so you're about 2.5 hours from the point of Puerto Natales. As you can also see, many people combine exploring this region with also visiting the Patagonia region of Argentina, because as you can see from the top right, you're actually not that far off from El Calafate, but you would still, it's not like something you could reach very quickly. I don't know if anyone remembers from the top of their head, because I don't, the driving distance, but it was like a full 8 hours, if not more, like a full day transfer, I think, would be required.
So it's like round trip. I think it ends up being like probably 10 or 12 hours.
Yeah. So just to kind of, to give you an overview of Torres Alpine itself, so it's a world famous national park in southern Chile. Like many of the highlights is basically this kind of like collection of mountains. So the Grey Glacier, the Valle Frances, the French Valley, and then also the 3 towers. The 3 towers are the base towers, so those are kind of the iconic kind of 3 peaks like you see in many photos of Torres Alpine. So it's a very expansive park. It covers 1,814 square kilometers. Do you think it would take several hours within a vehicle to kind of traverse most of the park, to be honest? Some things to kind of know about like how the park system works. So there is a park entry fee, but the nice thing about staying in somewhere like Patagonia Camp, it's already included in part of the package, so you don't have to worry about that. And then some common options for visiting the national park. You can do this independently via camping, trekking, renting your own car. Public buses, I suppose, are available. I don't know how frequently they run, or didn't really look into those logistics, but supposedly they are available. There's also the famous W trek, trekking, so that's an option you can do, and you would be able to stay in refugios or small lodges within the park itself, or also do camping.
Patagonia Camp help set that up.
Basically, I'll explain a little bit more about the excursions you can do with them, which basically covers many stops of the W trek, but you don't necessarily do the whole trek. Or you could also stay at a hotel lodge near or inside the park and do several day treks or excursions, which is what we were doing. So why we suggest Patagonia Camp. I don't know why these are words of wisdom. Britt thought they were summed it up pretty well. I wouldn't write that about my own writing. This is my takeaway. Like, although I hesitated at the cost initially, I do feel that the quality of the accommodation, the tours, the guides, all the staff, the breadth of activities offered, and really the uniqueness of the property make this a very worthwhile experience. So. Britt, do you want to take it away?
Sure. So a little bit about Patagonia Camp property. It's beautiful. Like, it's one of the most amazing properties I've ever been on. Again, it's about 9 miles outside of the park, but you're really in the middle of really pristine nature. It's a small property. There are 20 yurts, which are standalone, so you don't have to worry about much noise coming from your fellow guests. And then people all kind of gather in the restaurant, bar, lodge area, and then there's also a separate place where they have meetings to kind of introduce you to where, like how excursions work when you first arrive. They're very environmentally conscious, like they manage their own water system that they pump up from the lake. It's safe to drink. They don't sell bottled water there. And again, like there's no restaurants, like everything, it's all inclusive. Like you're at the lodge and you really wouldn't want to go anywhere else. The main, like when you're dining, for example, like in the top photo there, like it's not the best picture, but like on a clear day, which I think Monique and I really lucked out with the weather, but we were able to see like the peaks on a clear day, and even when there's weather, it's gorgeous. And it's not in the national park. What?
So just Jackie, we're dying at the views.
I'm sorry, I'm loving it.
Like, what did I say?
No, you're great.
Patagonia Camp, again, is not a part of the national park. It's on a private reserve. Monique, feel free to step in if I'm not, but like, I guess like a part of how the area developed were back in the day, like they were kind of divided into like these large estancias, and this person has maintained, I'm not sure if there are like building restrictions or whatever, but how they bring tourism, at least to this expansive estancia, again, really close to the entry of the park, is through Patagonia Camp. The yurts. I'm a camper, like I love the outdoors and I love camping, but I will say that having stayed in the yurt, apparently like yurts are Mongolian original structure or design, but they brought it to Patagonia and they're very unique. This, like I took this on my iPhone, like it was amazing. We did the regular program, so this is like a quote unquote standard yurt. It has a bathroom. You can like climate control. It's pretty cold even during the dry, warm season when we went. And it got really hot, so let's see, they give you all of like to kind of go with their mantra of being environmentally friendly. All of their shampoos, soaps are biodegradable, and if your clients are looking for like an extra luxury experience, they can do the private excursion. Is that like private excursion tour?
Right.
Which I'll explain a little bit on the next slide when we talk about the excursions, but what they get in terms of like the superior yurt is like, I think it's like 2 of these like little dome-shaped things with a bathroom, a hot tub, and then it's another dome for like a sitting area. We didn't actually sit in them, but it seemed really classy. Yeah. So a little, again, Monique and I did the regular all-inclusive program, which includes the yurt, transfers, so we got picked up and dropped off from our hotel in Puerto Natales, and then our transfer out took us all the way to Punta Arenas, which is further south in Chile. It includes, if you can drink, you can enjoy the open bar. They also had, it includes like the park entry fees, transportation to and from the park, and although we are much closer to the entrance at Patagonia Camp, there's still a lot of driving, like distance separates you from the trailhead to wherever you're staying. Monique, I know you're more of a foodie than I am, so feel free to expand on any of your experience dining, but I was wildly impressed with like the buffet breakfast. They had a coffee machine, lunch. We never ate lunch there except on our first day that we arrived, but they'll give, if you have an excursion planned for that day, they'll give you a boxed lunch. You carry your own water on your trek, but the way that service for lunch and dinner is managed at the lodge is you're sitting down, it's a la carte, unless they have like a special event where there's a barbecue. They have like an appetizer, main dish, and a dessert, and you won't be hungry.
Yeah.
You can specialize your order, like if you're vegetarian or you have allergies, and that's actually a question that they'll ask you at the very beginning is, do you have any dietary restrictions or whatnot? And again, the bar is included.
I guess I would just add, it was just how full service it was. Like,
Right.
there were waiters and waitresses serving us, but they also just went to a level of detail of memorizing our names, what our preferences were. So they were really like personalized, but it didn't feel like over the top where it felt forced. Like actually, and that speaks to the whole service that I think we received during our stay there. Like they're really like well trained, like very like, yeah, like approachable, like, but kind of on top of everything.
So excursions. Obviously you go to towards the Pine to enjoy the outdoors, so their excursion itinerary is catered to ways of experiencing the park, which is principally on foot, doing half or full day hikes. From the lodge, there are opportunities to pay extra for excursions like horseback riding, kayaking maybe.
Yeah.
But in my takeaway was in the 4 nights that we were there, I was really happy with the ones that were included in the package.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is when you arrive, they'll you have time to like check into your yurt, and then before dinner you will meet with one of the guides that is a part of the lodge, and they'll kind of give you a breakdown of like what options are available, and they'll ask you kind of like, what are your expectations on, are you a hiker, do you want to take it easy all of the days, like, and Monique and I were like, we kind of had an idea of the hikes that we ideally wanted to do, and they were more of like a higher level of being physically challenging. So they kind of suggested, like maybe do a mid hike, a hard hike, and then stagger it with one that would give you a day to rest your legs, and then we ended with a harder hike. So after that, each day we really lucked out with the weather, I think, but we did a hike each day, and how they work it out is so it's super small, like you're gonna interact with a lot of the people at the lodge, in the dining area, in social areas, bar, but how the regular shared program works is it has to be your yurt and another yurt who sign up for agree to do the same excursion, and then it's a go for the next day. So if for whatever reason you happen to have the base towers hike and no one else wants to sign up for it the next day, then we were never told no, you can't do it, but like there could be the option of needing to pay for it in private. If no other year, if you had your heart set on doing it, or maybe the weather was going to be good on one day. But we never ran into that scenario. But is that clear?
What month were you guys waiting for?
November.
How many yards was it? You know, how many yards there were? Did you say?
20.
20.
I'm not sure.
Was there a lot of people there with you? Because that's kind of like somewhat of a down season. So you didn't have issues when it was like somewhat of a down season. I doubt you might still have issues like March, February. It's full.
I guess I'll talk a little bit more about like when's the best time to go, but basically like it wasn't empty, but we wouldn't say it was like packed. I think towards the end of our stay, I think I noticed that there were a lot more groups arriving, so I think that must be the start of their high season. So these are like the mix of the excursions that we did. It was cold in the base towers. So I'll kind of talk more about the easier sort of options that we did. So again, as Britt was mentioning, like they really like, even if you think like you're physically fit and you want to take on the like more strenuous treks at the beginning, which we were like trying to do, they do like kind of push you to start on something easygoing. And I think the guides just do that to really kind of gauge how you are during the day as well, so they can best tailor the recommendations for the next few days. So we did something called the Lazo Weber, and that was a medium level hike, but that's still like a 5 hours of walking during the day. And it's maybe like 2 hours to kind of get to the start of the hike, so it was a pretty early start, I would say. Here though, like, even though it's 5 hours of walking, I would say a lot of the landscape was mostly flat for a lot of the time. I think it was just the end where it was just like a super steep decline, but again, you have like the trekking poles with you. And I think this was just really lovely, like a great way to kind of start the experience, because you just kind of got a lot of vistas like this of like really beautiful lakes and kind of the mountains in the background. So I thought, like, at least for me, it was like a really nice kind of easygoing hike to kind of start off with. Take the French Valley first.
French Valley is an example of a tour where you have to take a ferry to the trailhead. French Valley is also a leg of the popular W trek.
Right.
It's gorgeous, but one thing to keep in mind is while this excursion is included in the package provided by Patagonia Camp, we did have to pay the additional 50, I think it was 50 US for the each round. I think that was the total cost of taking the ferry, which you don't have to pay for until the end. So,
Think about it.
Yeah, it's not like we were scrambling for like cash at the end, but it is some not all, but some excursion options do have that. They were saying that this was going to be a really hard day.
Right.
It was long, but there wasn't a lot of uphill.
The
Until the
guides
end.
do have that tendency to exaggerate the difficulty of the trek, so that's why I was really being prepared for like a super difficult day. And it was like a long day, but I would say it was definitely like very manageable. Like, and I think just something to note. There's no altitude here, so you are basically at sea level when you're hiking. So it is like
Things you get to see while not having to.
Our third day was more like the rest day to kind of take it easy. So I think our legs were feeling a bit tired by that day. So that's why we decided to do the fauna tour. And I think that was just to kind of have the ability to kind of like spot some local animals. So I think we saw a lot of guanacos, and we also attempted to see pumas. I personally didn't see the puma, but those who carried binoculars with them were actually able to spot them. But it's quite cool. Like, it was towards the beginning of our tour where there was a puma approaching like a herd of guanacos, and the guanacos started calling out to each other. So it was interesting to see that interaction of prey and predator happening. So I would say that was like quite impressive. I wasn't really sure what to expect from this tour. It'd be like kind of like a boring walking tour where you just spot some animals. It was actually like a lot cooler than I was expecting. It's like a modest amount of walking, so I think within this group there were maybe like the older packs who were joining us, and they like loved it because it's great opportunities for like photography. And then towards the end of the tour you have a lot of time in the van, and that's kind of to see some miradores of like various peaks. It takes you to like one side of the park that you don't get to see when you're visiting, doing these other excursions.
In the base tower, we ended with probably the most iconic hike in the park, also notably the most trafficked compared to our other two hikes that were 3-ish that we did. 8 hours walking, definitely. I would say while you don't gain a lot of elevation, it is a lot of uphill compared to the other hikes that we did. We also got a very broad range of weather, which I think is a good example for what you might get on an average day in the park. We started, I think I was in a t-shirt, which is pretty uncommon. And then we walked up, and then you turn a corner and it's called the wind tunnel. And there wasn't as much wind, but our guide was telling us that they have these techniques of holding on to the person in front of you, because it's a tunnel, obviously strong winds, but you're also walking.
Drop off, right?
Where there's a pretty steep drop off, so just safety practices. It's not dangerous, but they do take precautions because of the extreme weather. And if you're lucky, you get to see the towers without clouds in front of them. I was freezing.
Yeah, it was very cold out there. Yeah.
And this is a hike. Also, one thing which is nice is they you can use hiking poles that they give. You can opt not to use them. I'm very thankful that I had them on the base tower hike, because the last kind of push of about 30 minutes is mostly rock, and didn't want to fall. So,
do you think that this was good to wait until the last day to do the base tower hike, or do you think that your legs were already kind of tired at that point, or?
I think in terms of more so than I think having an easy day before definitely helped, or maybe having that be starting with an easy day and then doing it first. It's more of if you have a day, go on a day when there's good weather.
Okay.
More so than
right. Okay.
So alongside the French Valley, the base towers is also another loop of the W trek as well. So you can do bits of it as part of your excursion. It's frozen. It's moved on my screen, but hasn't. So there we go. So here's some travel tips. So when booking flights from Santiago to southern Chile, it's definitely preferred to fly direct to Puerto Natales versus Punta Arenas, because it will take you a lot closer to kind of the national park itself. But I think, and that's what we did flying in, because there's usually one flight in per week on a Saturday and one flight per week out, which I believe operates on a Tuesday or Wednesday. We actually flew out from Punta Arenas. However, I just double checked the flight schedule today, and I think it really depends on the season. I assume that they're not operating flights right now because of the high wind season, because even when we were landing, that was in November, there was so much turbulence in the land itself. The plane was shaking a lot. I didn't particularly enjoy it. And when you kind of get out of the plane and you're walking towards the actual airport, you feel how strong the wind is. So I assume that's the reason. So even though that would be nice to be able to offer the packs, I guess you just always have to check ahead. And another funny thing to note, that flight doesn't show up on LATAM Peru, but it will if you're on the LATAM Chile website. And just thinking about visiting the national park from Puerto Natales, it is possible to do day excursions from Puerto Natales. Many hotels are located there, but I think just really due to the distance, I think that's why we thought it was preferred to be in or near the park itself. It cuts down at least on an hour or more than 2 hours of driving time. So that would just be added on to each day and what is already a very long day and you're doing an excursion. And then I think the best time to visit the national park, we were there in November and we were told that the shoulder months of October to November and then March through April are the best time of the year. December, January, February are probably fine, weather-wise. You do have high winds during that time period, but we've also been told it was the most crowded. So according to some of the guides we had, that they said the base towers trek was just completely packed in. So the more popular excursions will be, not only have people joining you from your lodge, but just from basically all the backpackers, all the people from other lodges. So just maybe kind of keep that in mind. And then really the winter is obviously very long there. So we were told from May to about early December, it's really just packed in by snow. So it really can visit it for that whole chunk of the year. And then whether it's worth actually kind of spending much time in Puerto Natales, I wouldn't say it really offers much. There's a very pretty lakeside setting. There's really not much to do and see in the town itself. It's just convenient for picking up supplies that you might have forgotten, to access a pharmacy, or to catch the ferry in case you're doing other excursions. But it's just a very windy town more than anything. So I think if you really have a shortened amount of time to really spend as much of that time in the park itself as possible is worth it.
Is the lodge closed during snow season?
Yes. Here's some additional resources.
The pros and cons.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Sorry, I think the slide froze. Thank you, Britt.
It's just kind of to summarize some pros and cons. Pros, to visit the park because of just it's Patagonia Camp is a very free way of doing it. The thought of doing that trip within a certain time period, it gives me a headache. But and again, it's super friendly or individualized service. The guides that we had, the drivers were very professional. The vans were awesome as well.
Definitely a pro.
Really want to bring that home.
And then the cons are, again, I think once you pay for the experience, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. You're more focused on the experience, but it's more pricey option than others. Moni kind of touched on this as well, but it is closer. Sorry, closer. Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, I was rereading. It is, staying at Patagonia Camp does cut down on drive time. Because really, if you consider it was taking us from the camp to go to the trailheads 2 hours, and on top of that, people coming from Puerto Natales, that's an additional 2.5. The roads are pretty good, but you still get some gravel roads, principally from Puerto Natales to the park entrance. So, I mean, that's 4 hours one way, 8 hours total. So there's a lot of daylight at that time of the year, but it's almost worth spending a little more money to stay closer to cut down on drive time. And cons are, no matter how much money you spend, you're just not guaranteed good weather. So you could be really unlucky and run into rain and high winds, and you're not going to get your money back. But I don't think you could still do excursions, but you might not have the same experience that you might get on a nice sunny day.
Couple of questions. When we talk about expensive, with our markup, how much are we talking? Like with our confidential rates, we have
Right.
like, are we talking $2,000 a person? Or are we talking $10,000 a person?
It could be. You would probably know from the last.
It's the
quote
same
you
cost as
went
Los
to.
Toys.
Yeah.
So it's like,
$5 grand.
yeah,
A person.
it comes into being like $2K a person. if you-
$2K a person.
I wouldn't put it.
For
I don't
For-
remember
for
directly,
how
but I think
many
I did mine for like
days?
4 days,
4 days.
3 nights, or 3 nights,
Okay.
3 days and 2 nights. It wasn't a full program
Kind
which I'll
of
do,
like
but
Galapagos.
it's But like Las Torres is like the same pricing. It's very expensive. Anything that's in the park, even the eco camp. So like there, I think one I quoted was like a 3-day, 2-night or something. 4 day, but it's cheaper than. I mean, it's worth the experience if you're gonna go. I mean, half the time those full day tours even cost like $300, $400 a person. So it's like.
And you have like all the food and all the
Yes, all the food.
Bring it on the truck.
So I don't know.
Get your money's worth.
But I want to say it came out to like the program I played. It was like $1,800 a person, something like that, and then the markup on top of it.
Oh. Wait, that was
Oh, that's without.
Yeah.
Oh, ooh.
So probably more.
Yeah, whatever markups. She likes it.
Do you remember how many days your PAX did? So we did like a 6-day, 5-night. And I was really like, I don't think I would have wanted less time because I really like that we had
Definitely not
4
that. It's like 4 days
full
max, I
days of
think.
excursions. So
Mine are older, so I would just say, they didn't want eco camp. But Los Torres full wanted to give me this
Yeah.
option out of nowhere. He said,
I think
prices.
a lot of people confuse Patagonia Camp with Eco Camp. So I think there are a lot of similarities. I think just what I heard was that Patagonia Camp was nicer, like they have like full bathrooms, or
Yeah.
I think they have like special like environmental toilets in Eco Camp, so it's a little bit more. Yeah, that's it. Rustic.
What kind of travelers were there? From what countries?
Mostly American, like a few, I think Europeans, I would say as well. They were definitely like, I think the majority were on the older side. I think there were like couples who were like maybe around our age, not too many young people though. Like maybe one family like with kids. I don't know how often people bring young kids there though. But,
Are they kid-friendly tours or like?
yeah, but you'll probably mostly be doing the more like visiting, like something like the fauna tour. I'm sure they would love. But I think they have like a pretty wide menu of excursions to kind of offer something for everyone, which is nice.
Was there anyone who like had mobility issues there that you saw on any of your tours? Or
I
like
think
how would
there
they do?
was a person who didn't have mobility issues, but I think he said like, I don't know if it was like joint pain or something really bad, arthritis, but that husband was part of the couple. So he didn't do any excursions during his time there. He was like, I'm here to just enjoy the setting, but I'm not sure you would get the most, especially for the money you're spending, unless you're somebody who's really active and you want to be doing an excursion all day. I mean, it's a perfectly beautiful setting to just kind of relax there with the lakeside and kind of like, yeah, especially if you do have good weather. It's a very beautiful setting, but
Does each year have to do the same excursions? Like if you had a family with like younger children but also older children, could like mom go with one and dad go with the other and choose different?
I know with
Activities.
couples there were sometimes like a husband who wanted to do a trek but the wife wanted to stay behind, so I think they were able to accommodate that, for example, so I'm sure.
Right. Both of you together, that's good.
Do you find like with the way that they've got it set up with how they're kind of designing how tours are chosen, were like people like campaigning for others to like join them on their
I think in a
chosen
friendly
tour?
way. Like I think they
Okay.
definitely like, does anybody want to do like the French Valley with me tomorrow? Like
Oh, that's fun.
or at least like guides take note of like if you couldn't get the one you wanted for the next day, they were pretty good at keeping in mind, okay, like reminding you when the next day was going to be open. So like maybe 2 days from then they'd like be like, hey, we have it open, do you still want to do it, sort of thing. So they really did their best to make sure people got like their preferences met when possible.
And just to clarify, maybe these these excursions that you can do, you get like kind of briefed on them when you first arrive, or they kind of let you know before you get there, or how does that work?
You could do your own research, obviously, online before arriving, but they'll give you like the full briefing. Usually, like with at least one guide who's kind of like ask you a lot of questions about your interests, and also they have like a screen like this where they're going through like all the options available.
How many people were like with you guys when you did each excursion?
I think the most we had were 3 yurts, so 6 people.
I think it was just the one day we did the base towers. They had like it was like two groups because I think a lot of people had signed up for that day, but then we had 2 guides coming with us. So that was like the only time where there was like a huge team of us walking together. So just try to play this video.
Maybe.
Walking up
Oh
there.
my god. Maybe in my season.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
How
We're
long
trying
is
to push.
Wow.
They'll just send them this video.
I thought that was
That's
yes.
what I said.
Wow, they're
Yeah,
really
it's like,
spaced
it's
out.
available.
That's
It's
nice.
available.
So are those the deluxe ones? The
The ones that are-
next to each other?
right?
Or the
Yeah, particularly like the labs.
really great.
Wow, that's nice.
With free wine as well.
I think they were all kind of like tiered to make sure that each one gets a view of the lake when possible, but I guess we weren't asked whether we wanted one closer, so I guess that's something you can ask for in advance, otherwise, no. Yeah.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Seriously.
Just make the opposite.
One of
Should
the
Wi-Fi's not
yards.
too good.
Right.
You're transforming your style.
Flora and fauna. Do you see many like any books of that? Yeah, flowers and animals.
I think we learn a little bit about the vegetation. I wouldn't say it's as impressive as like kind of like the unique animals you see in the park.
Is that the base tower one?
Yeah. And you also see cave paintings as well. It's actually really known for like the art, like rich archaeological sites that they've been able to dig up.
When I didn't see the
In the final one, yeah.
Is it like a birding destination?
Mostly condos and Any other questions? Or?
You said this was just a suggestion from one. So did you guys just kind of go to them and say you really want to go to this? Like, what do you recommend? Is that kind of
Might have heard about it from Adam, actually.
It's because he had it as a backup for when the Swiss.
I think that we were just asking him because when we were researching just about going to the national park, I think we tried doing research on our own. It was very confusing. Wasn't very clear like how far in advance you would need to get tickets to enter the park or to kind of like get lodging. And I was already hearing like things were selling out because we were approaching high season. So out of a moment of panic, I asked Mom, like help. And then he just offered us that, and I was like, I'm really not sure. It's like very expensive. And then when we were considering, it really like wasn't that much more than kind of getting a whole package with the refugios as well. And that's like very basic accommodation. So it was like I'd rather, spend a little bit more and kind of get to experience this. So.
Yeah, seriously.
Gotcha.
Yeah. talk about that.
You guys